Have you ever noticed how some people seem magnetic, irresistible, almost untouchable, while others are instantly forgettable? You meet someone, you like them, you want to impress them, and somehow you end up saying too much too soon. You spill your thoughts, your feelings, your insecurities, your past, all in the hope that they'll like you back. And then somehow the magic fades. The spark disappears. Suddenly, what was once mysterious, intriguing, and desirable becomes ordinary, predictable, even boring. Why does this happen? Why does oversharing, something that feels natural and vulnerable, often destroy attraction instead of building it? The truth is, when you reveal everything too early, you hand over your power. You put your emotions, your worth, and your value on the table for judgment before they've even earned the right to see it. People are drawn to what they can't fully grasp, to what keeps them curious, to what makes them lean in and want more. Once you give it all away, that curiosity disappears, and so does respect. Think about it. When someone tells you their whole life story in the first conversation, do you feel captivated or do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel attracted or do you feel like you've already seen it all? Attraction isn't built on disclosure. It's built on restraint. It's built on timing, control, and the unspoken tension that comes from mystery. And yet most people sabotage it because they confuse vulnerability with oversharing and neediness with authenticity. Here's the harsh reality. The more you like someone, the more dangerous oversharing becomes. Your desire to be understood, to be liked, to connect blinds you to the subtle dynamics at play. You think honesty equals closeness, but in reality, overexposing your thoughts and emotions too soon often creates distance instead of intimacy. People start to take you for granted, lose curiosity, or worse, stop respecting the boundaries that make you magnetic. But there's a better way. A way to like someone, to connect with them, to build attraction and respect without losing yourself, without giving away your power. It starts with control. It starts with understanding the subtle psychology of human interaction. It starts with knowing that what you choose to reveal when you reveal it and how you reveal it carries far more weight than what you say. If you're ready to stop giving away your power, if you're ready to learn the art of restraint, and if you're ready to become magnetic, respected, and unforgettable, then pay attention. Because what I'm about to teach you will change the way you approach every interaction, every connection, and every relationship where your heart is on the line. Mystery is one of the most powerful tools you can wield in relationships, especially when it comes to someone you like. Yet most people ignore it entirely, thinking that being completely open, transparent, and vulnerable is the path to connection. The truth is, revealing everything about yourself too quickly often destroys attraction, dilutes respect, and robs you of the advantage that comes from being selective with your words and emotions. Mystery is not about playing games or being dishonest. It's about creating space, intrigue, and anticipation. It's about holding a part of yourself back until the right time, giving others a reason to lean in, to notice, and to value your presence. When you overshare, you are essentially giving away what makes you interesting. You spill your stories, your insecurities, your dreams, your fears, hoping to impress or be understood, and in the process you remove the tension, the curiosity, and the magnetism that naturally draws people toward you. Mystery works because humans are hardwired to want what they can't fully have. We are drawn to what challenges us, what keeps us guessing, and what feels just out of reach. When someone reveals everything too soon, there is nothing left to explore, nothing left to desire, nothing left to respect. They become ordinary. Think about it this way. When you meet someone who is mysterious, composed, and selective about what they share, how do you feel? You lean in. You pay attention. You are curious about them. You notice their energy, their tone, their gestures, and the subtleties in what they choose to say. You start to imagine their thoughts, their experiences, and their personality. That's the effect of mystery. It creates engagement, interest, and emotional investment without demanding it. You feel a pull toward that person because there is depth you can sense, but not fully access, and your brain craves to bridge that gap. Contrast that with someone who overshares from the very beginning. They tell you everything, expecting you to be fascinated, expecting you to reciprocate with the same intensity. But what happens is often the opposite. Your brain says, I've already seen it all. There's nothing left to discover. The tension evaporates, the interest wanes, and often people unintentionally reveal their vulnerabilities too soon, which can be misinterpreted as neediness or lack of self-control. Mystery is what allows you to pace your vulnerability, to reveal yourself gradually in ways that build intrigue, respect, and emotional connection. Mystery also works as a form of power. When you hold back, you control the narrative of who you are. You decide what others get to see, and when they get to see it, you are not at the mercy of their judgment or their expectations. Oversharing, on the other hand, places your emotional state in someone else's hands. When you reveal too much too soon, you give them leverage over your feelings. They can judge you, misunderstand you, or even take advantage of your openness. Mystery protects your energy, your emotions, and your dignity, allowing you to engage on your own terms. Furthermore, mystery is not just about silence, it's about selective expression. You can be expressive, charismatic, and engaging without giving away the entirety of who you are. A carefully chosen story, a thought-provoking observation, or a subtle reveal of your personality can have a far greater impact than unloading every detail of your life. Mystery is the art of suggestion, the power of subtlety, and the elegance of restraint. It is the difference between someone who is immediately forgettable and someone who leaves a lasting impression. People often confuse mystery with aloofness or emotional distance, but mystery is not about shutting people out or being cold. It is about strategic openness. It is about creating an environment where others feel compelled to invest in learning more about you. It fosters curiosity, encourages attention, and enhances attraction. Oversharing, by contrast, satisfies curiosity too quickly and often overwhelms the other person, creating fatigue rather than fascination. Mystery allows you to reveal layers over time, keeping the connection dynamic, engaging, and respectful. One of the most powerful aspects of mystery is how it builds anticipation. When you reveal yourself gradually, people begin to wait for the next layer, the next insight, the next story. They become invested in discovering more about you, in earning your trust, in engaging with you more deeply. Oversharing skips all of that, handing away your depth without requiring effort from the other person. Mystery makes others work for your attention and understanding, which in turn increases the value they place on it. Mystery also strengthens your own self-discipline and self-respect. It forces you to think before you speak, to evaluate what is necessary to share, and to recognize the power of your words and actions. By choosing what to reveal and what to hold back, you cultivate a sense of self-control that carries over into every aspect of your life. You demonstrate emotional intelligence and maturity, showing that you are not driven by impulse or neediness, but by awareness and strategy. Finally, mystery creates a lasting impression. People rarely remember every detail someone tells them, but they do remember the energy, the aura, and the sense of depth that someone carried. When you maintain mystery, you leave room for imagination, for curiosity, for longing. You create a presence that is compelling, memorable, and magnetic, qualities that no amount of oversharing can achieve. In relationships, attraction, and human connection, mystery is a form of power. It is the quiet strength that draws people in, the subtle magnetism that makes them lean closer, and the invisible force that keeps them engaged. Oversharing erodes that power. It diminishes your presence, devalues your story, and weakens your influence. By embracing mystery, by pacing your revelations, and by holding back strategically, you become someone who is respected, desired, and unforgettable. Mystery is not a trick. It is mastery over yourself, your energy, and the connections you cultivate. So if you want to be magnetic, if you want to be respected, and if you want the people you care about to value you deeply, remember this: never give it all away too soon. Hold back, cultivate intrigue, reveal selectively, let others work for your trust, your attention, and your depth, because the true power lies not in what you reveal, but in what you choose to keep just out of reach, and the impression that lingers long after the conversation ends. Self-control is one of the most underestimated qualities a person can possess, yet it is perhaps the single most important factor in determining how others perceive you, especially when it comes to relationships and attraction. When you like someone, when your emotions are involved, the natural impulse is often to act impulsively, speak without thinking, reveal too much, or seek immediate validation. But the truth is, every moment you resist that impulse, every time you hold back, you are demonstrating something far more powerful than vulnerability. You are demonstrating self-respect. Self-control is not simply about restraint. It is the foundation of dignity, influence, and personal power. Most people confuse self-control with suppression. They think it means bottling up their feelings, hiding who they are, or pretending to be something they are not. That is not self-control. True self-control is awareness. It is understanding your emotions, your impulses, and your words, and making deliberate choices about how and when to express them. It is the difference between acting out of neediness and acting out of strategy, between seeking validation and maintaining your power. When you master this skill, you stop being reactive and start being intentional. The moment you overshare, especially with someone you like, you sacrifice self-control. You give away your thoughts, your fears, your insecurities, hoping to create closeness or to be accepted. You act impulsively because you want approval, because you are afraid of being misunderstood, because you feel that silence is a weakness. But over time, people do not respect that behavior. They take it as a sign of dependency or lack of emotional strength. True attraction, respect, and influence do not come from spilling your heart. They come from pacing your vulnerability, choosing your moments, and maintaining control over yourself. Self-control is also a reflection of emotional intelligence. It requires you to be aware of your triggers, to recognize the situations that make you want to overshare, and to manage your response. When you are able to sit with your feelings, to observe your impulses without immediately acting on them, you develop a level of maturity and composure that others notice and respect. People are drawn to individuals who are emotionally stable, composed under pressure, and capable of managing their own needs without constantly seeking reassurance from others. That is the essence of self-respect. Think about the difference between someone who constantly reacts and someone who exercises restraint. The person who reacts exposes every thought and emotion, creating unpredictability and often chaos. The person who exercises self-control communicates selectively, allowing their words to carry weight, significance, and impact. Every revelation feels intentional rather than desperate. Every story shared, every detail revealed, every vulnerability exposed is carefully measured and delivered with purpose. That person commands attention because they are disciplined, composed, and unshakable, the very traits that cultivate respect and admiration. Self-control also protects your emotional energy. Oversharing often leaves you drained, vulnerable to judgment, and exposed to manipulation. When you control what you reveal, you protect yourself from unnecessary emotional risk. You maintain authority over your feelings, ensuring that your energy is spent on people and situations that are worthy of it. This is not coldness. It is a form of self-preservation and strategic engagement that ensures your interactions are meaningful, impactful, and respectful of your worth. Furthermore, self-control builds trust not only with others, but with yourself. Every time you resist the urge to overshare, every time you pause before reacting, every time you manage your impulses, you reinforce your ability to make deliberate, thoughtful decisions. You show yourself that you are capable of handling your emotions, your desires, and your relationships with integrity. This internal trust translates outwardly. Others sense it. They recognize that you are someone who does not act out of desperation or insecurity, but someone whose presence is measured, intentional, and magnetic. Self-control is also about pacing your emotional investment. When you like someone, it is tempting to dive in head first, to reveal everything, to accelerate intimacy, but rushing emotional disclosure is one of the fastest ways to reduce attraction. People are naturally drawn to those who are confident, composed, and deliberate with their attention and trust. By exercising restraint, you set the pace for the relationship. You create anticipation, curiosity, and intrigue. You demonstrate that your attention and your heart are not given freely. They are earned, valued, and respected. That is the ultimate demonstration of self-respect. Another key aspect of self-control is the ability to respond rather than react. When someone challenges you, questions you, or provokes you, it is easy to respond impulsively, defensively, aggressively, or emotionally. But true self-respect is displayed in your ability to pause, assess, and respond intentionally. Your words and actions carry authority because they are chosen, not dictated by momentary impulses. This kind of discipline is magnetic. It commands respect not through force or dominance, but through composure, intelligence, and emotional mastery. Ultimately, self-control equals self-respect because it demonstrates that you value yourself enough to manage your emotions, your words, and your actions. It shows that you are not at the mercy of your desires or insecurities. It communicates that you are a person of integrity, strength, and discipline. People are naturally drawn to this type of energy because it signals confidence, emotional stability, and power. Oversharing may seem like honesty, but it often undermines all of these qualities: restraint, intention, and self-control. On the other hand, amplify them. So the next time you feel the urge to overshare, to explain yourself, to lay your heart on the line prematurely, remember this: every word you withhold, every pause you take, every moment you exercise restraint, you are reinforcing your self-respect. You are demonstrating power. You are creating magnetic energy that draws people toward you, builds anticipation, and cultivates respect. Self-control is not denial. It is mastery. It is strength. And it is the single most effective way to ensure that, when the time is right, your vulnerability has impact, your words have weight, and your presence commands attention. Master self-control, and you master self-respect. Respect yourself, and the world will follow. Human psychology is an intricate, powerful force that governs the way people think, feel, and react in every interaction. Understanding it is not about manipulation or trickery, it's about awareness, especially when it comes to relationships, attraction, and connections with people you care about. Knowing how the human mind works gives you an unparalleled advantage. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that transparency and oversharing automatically generate closeness. The truth is far more nuanced. Human beings are wired to crave mystery, tension, and selective disclosure, and failing to understand these dynamics can sabotage your own efforts to connect. At the heart of psychology is a simple principle. People value what they have to earn. If someone is handed everything, their attention, their trust, their emotional access, without effort, it loses significance. Oversharing, especially when you like someone, can unintentionally signal desperation, neediness, or lack of self-regulation. The human mind instinctively recognizes these signals, often without conscious awareness, and it can create subtle disinterest or diminished attraction. In contrast, when you pace your revelations, maintain intrigue, and reveal yourself selectively, you create scarcity, and scarcity has immense psychological power. People naturally assign greater value to what is rare, reserved, and earned. Another fundamental psychological truth is that people are drawn to competence and confidence. Oversharing often undermines both. When someone unloads their thoughts, fears, or insecurities too soon, it communicates a lack of control over emotions. The mind perceives this as a weakness or instability, even if the intention was authenticity. Confidence, on the other hand, is reflected in restraint, selective disclosure, and calm self-assurance. It signals to the other person that you are grounded, emotionally intelligent, and capable of managing your own needs. From a psychological standpoint, confidence is magnetic because it implies that your value is inherent. You do not require constant validation to feel whole. Curiosity is another powerful force of human psychology. The human brain thrives on incomplete patterns, puzzles, and open-ended questions. Mystery, subtlety, and selective revelation stimulate curiosity and engagement. When you overshare, you eliminate these elements. The brain no longer has gaps to fill, questions to ponder, or layers to discover. Curiosity is not just a passing interest, it triggers emotional investment. The more the other person has to think, imagine, and explore about you, the more psychologically invested they become. Oversharing short-circuits this natural process and reduces the depth of engagement. Emotional triggers also play a crucial role in human psychology. Every interaction carries subtle cues that influence perception, attraction, and response. Oversharing, particularly when it exposes vulnerability prematurely, can trigger unconscious responses in the other person, awkwardness, discomfort, or even the instinct to distance themselves. The human mind evaluates not just what is said, but how it is said, when it is said, and the energy behind it. People are finely tuned to detect imbalance. By understanding these triggers, you can navigate interactions with precision, revealing the right things at the right time, creating emotional resonance rather than dissonance. Reciprocity is another key psychological concept. Humans are wired to respond in kind. What you give tends to come back to you. But this principle works best when the exchange is balanced. Oversharing disrupts this balance. When one person unloads too much too soon, the other may feel overwhelmed or unsure how to reciprocate appropriately. The imbalance can reduce perceived value, diminish respect, and even create subtle tension. Understanding this principle allows you to manage your disclosures strategically, ensuring that each interaction builds intrigue, connection, and mutual investment. The psychology of desire also underscores why mystery and restraint are critical. People do not desire what is freely available. Desire grows in the presence of challenge, scarcity, and subtle difficulty. Oversharing removes these elements entirely. It makes the dynamic predictable and reduces emotional intensity. Conversely, pacing what you share, controlling your energy, and revealing select aspects of your personality strategically triggers desire, interest, and emotional engagement. This is not manipulation, it is mastery over the natural principles of attraction and human connection. Cognitive biases also play a role. The human brain tends to overvalue what is scarce, undervalue what is abundant, and interpret actions through an emotional lens rather than a purely rational one. Oversharing creates abundance, which the brain perceives as less valuable. It also exposes emotions prematurely, which can be misinterpreted or discounted. By understanding these biases, you gain the ability to communicate in a way that enhances value, maintains intrigue, and maximizes the psychological impact of your presence. Timing is another critical element informed by human psychology. People process information, emotions, and interactions at different rates. Revealing too much too soon overwhelms this natural pacing, reducing impact and emotional resonance. Strategic timing, on the other hand, aligns with how the human mind builds connection gradually through layered exposure, curiosity, and reinforcement. When you master timing, every word, every gesture, every disclosure has far greater influence and effect. Finally, understanding human psychology is about self-mastery as much as it is about understanding others. Awareness of your own impulses, triggers, and tendencies allows you to regulate your behavior effectively. When you are aware of why you feel the urge to overshare, why you seek validation, or why you want to impress, you can intervene before acting impulsively. This self-regulation not only enhances your personal power, but also signals psychological maturity to others. People are naturally drawn to those who can manage themselves. They sense stability, strength, and depth. In essence, human psychology is a blueprint for influence, attraction, and connection. Oversharing ignores this blueprint. It ignores the principles of scarcity, curiosity, reciprocity, timing, and emotional triggers. Understanding these psychological forces allows you to navigate interactions deliberately, strategically, and effectively. It enables you to maintain mystery, pace your vulnerability, and cultivate respect. It transforms how people perceive you, not just as someone who is available, but as someone who is magnetic, composed, and valuable. Mastering human psychology does not mean being manipulative. It means being conscious. It means understanding the invisible rules that govern human perception and behavior, and using that knowledge to create interactions that are meaningful, respectful, and compelling. By applying these principles, you can connect deeply without oversharing, maintain intrigue without being distant, and build influence without losing authenticity. When you understand human psychology, every interaction becomes intentional. Every word carries weight. Every pause builds anticipation. Every revelation has impact. You stop giving everything away for free and start creating connections that are powerful, magnetic, and lasting. Oversharing is no longer an impulse. It becomes a choice you refuse to make. Because the person who understands psychology doesn't just react, they orchestrate, engage, and attract with precision. Emotional vulnerability is often celebrated as a pathway to intimacy, authenticity, and connection. People are told that to be truly close to someone, they must reveal their deepest thoughts, fears, and feelings. But here's a truth that is rarely discussed. Emotional vulnerability, when mishandled, can be destructive, especially when it comes to someone you like. Sharing too much too soon can backfire. It can diminish attraction, reduce respect, and create an imbalance in the relationship. The key is not to avoid vulnerability altogether, but to navigate it strategically. Emotional intelligence, the ability to understand, manage, and communicate your emotions wisely, is what separates those who rise from those who fall into the trap of oversharing. The first mistake people make with emotional vulnerability is confusing honesty with overexposure. Honesty is essential. It fosters trust, demonstrates integrity, and shows authenticity. But overexposure, revealing every detail of your insecurities, your past, your fears, can overwhelm the other person and shift the dynamic in unintended ways. People need time to process, to build curiosity, and to earn your trust. When you give everything away immediately, you remove the tension, the intrigue, and the gradual unfolding that makes connection compelling. Emotional vulnerability is most effective when it is intentional, paced, and aligned with the depth of the relationship. Another common mistake is using vulnerability as a tool for validation. Many people reveal too much because they are seeking reassurance. Will they like me if they know this? Will they understand me if I tell them that? While the intention may seem harmless, it signals neediness and dependency. From a psychological perspective, this diminishes your perceived value. Humans are wired to respect those who can regulate their emotions, manage their needs, and maintain composure. Oversharing for validation, even unconsciously, communicates the opposite. It communicates a lack of self-control and an over-reliance on external approval. Timing is critical in emotional vulnerability. Sharing your deepest emotions before the other person has earned access to them is like revealing the climax of a story before anyone has read the introduction. The impact is lost. The emotional depth, the significance, and the weight of what you reveal depend on context, trust, and pacing. Strategic vulnerability builds anticipation, maintains intrigue, and ensures that your emotional energy is respected. Those who fail to consider timing often end up pushing people away despite their intention to connect. Boundaries are another essential element. Vulnerability without boundaries is dangerous. Oversharing exposes you to judgment, misinterpretation, or even exploitation. People may misuse your openness, manipulate your emotions, or take advantage of your generosity. Protecting your heart does not mean shutting it off. It means being selective about what you share with whom and when. Boundaries are a form of self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. They allow you to be emotionally open without being emotionally reckless. Emotional regulation is also key. When someone you like triggers strong emotions, excitement, fear, longing, anxiety, it's easy to respond impulsively by revealing too much. The ability to manage your emotional state before expressing it is critical. Emotional intelligence is not just about understanding your feelings, it's about mastering them, channeling them, and using them strategically. By pausing, reflecting, and choosing what to disclose, you convert raw emotion into deliberate communication that strengthens attraction rather than weakens it. A major mistake people make is conflating comfort with closeness. Just because someone is friendly, attentive, or warm does not mean they are ready for your full emotional disclosure. Oversharing too early can create a false sense of intimacy, leading to disappointment when the other person does not reciprocate at the same level. True closeness is earned gradually, and the emotional trust you build over time is far more powerful than what can be achieved in a single unrestrained outpouring. Emotional vulnerability is most effective when it unfolds in alignment with the relationship's natural progression. Another pitfall is assuming that sharing pain automatically creates empathy or attraction. Pain can create connection, but it can also create discomfort, guilt, or distance. People are often unprepared to process someone else's deep vulnerabilities immediately, and when they are overwhelmed, they may unconsciously withdraw. Emotional vulnerability must be calibrated. It should invite connection, not demand it. It should spark empathy, not trigger avoidance. Understanding this balance is what separates those who are emotionally intelligent from those who are impulsive with their feelings. The energy behind what you share is just as important as the content. Oversharing often comes from a place of anxiety, desperation, or fear of rejection. These energies are noticeable even if subtle, and they affect how your words are received. Conversely, controlled vulnerability communicates confidence, composure, and self-respect. It signals that you are in charge of your emotions rather than being controlled by them. This psychological impact is profound. People are naturally drawn to those who manage their internal world effectively. Finally, emotional vulnerability is not about avoidance. It's about strategy. The goal is not to suppress your feelings or become emotionally cold. The goal is to reveal yourself in ways that maximize impact, build respect, and maintain attraction. By pacing your disclosures, regulating your energy, protecting your boundaries, and aligning your vulnerability with the natural flow of the relationship, you create depth, intrigue, and connection that lasts. Emotional intelligence transforms raw vulnerability into strength, influence, and magnetic presence. To avoid emotional vulnerability mistakes, you must first understand your triggers, recognize your impulses, and establish clear boundaries. You must learn to regulate your emotions, pace your revelations, and communicate deliberately. You must distinguish between authenticity and oversharing, between honesty and impulsive exposure. When you master these skills, emotional vulnerability becomes a tool of influence and connection rather than a liability. Ultimately, emotional intelligence allows you to like someone without losing yourself, to connect deeply without oversharing, and to build trust without surrendering your power. It teaches you that timing, pacing, and boundaries are not barriers to intimacy. They are the framework that makes true intimacy possible. Emotional vulnerability is not a weakness, mishandling it is. When handled with awareness, it becomes one of the most powerful forces in relationships, attraction, and personal growth. Restraint is one of the most underrated qualities in human interaction, particularly when it comes to relationships, attraction, and influence. It is the subtle, almost invisible force that separates those who are magnetic from those who are easily forgotten. Most people equate attraction with charm, humor, or constant engagement. But in reality, restraint often carries far more power than words, actions, or gestures alone. Knowing when to hold back, what to reveal, and how much to invest emotionally is a skill that transforms ordinary interactions into magnetic experiences. Restraint is not about coldness or detachment. It is about deliberate self-mastery, strategic pacing, and maintaining personal power. When you overshare, particularly with someone you like, you reduce your own value. You give away your stories, your emotions, your thoughts, and your energy without any effort on their part. In psychological terms, this creates imbalance. You have invested heavily while the other person has yet to earn access to that level of openness. Human beings naturally assign higher value to what requires effort, patience, and attention to obtain. Restraint creates that value. By controlling your self-expression, you force the other person to lean in, to pay attention, and to earn your trust and attention over time. That very dynamic is the essence of attraction. Restraint also builds respect. People respect those who manage themselves. Emotional self-control, selective disclosure, and careful pacing demonstrate maturity and composure. When someone acts impulsively, constantly revealing their emotions, their insecurities, or their desires, it signals dependency and lack of discipline. Conversely, someone who exercises restraint communicates confidence, stability, and strength. They do not need external validation to feel worthy. That alone elevates their perceived value in the eyes of others. People are drawn to those who are self-contained, who possess a quiet authority over their own mind and emotions. Timing plays a critical role in turning restraint into attraction. Strategic restraint involves choosing the right moments to reveal personal information, emotional depth, or vulnerability. It is the difference between telling someone your story too soon and telling it in a way that builds suspense, curiosity, and connection. When you pace your disclosures, each revelation carries more weight. Each insight, story, or emotion shared becomes significant, creating a sense of anticipation and value. This is the psychology behind attraction. People are drawn to what is meaningful, scarce, and earned, not what is freely given in excess. Restraint also affects how others perceive your boundaries. Those who overshare often appear emotionally available to a fault, signaling that their boundaries are weak or non-existent. People unconsciously sense this, and it can reduce respect and admiration. When you exercise restraint, you establish a clear sense of personal boundaries. You communicate that your attention, your trust, and your emotional energy are valuable resources that are not given lightly. This boundary signals strength and stability, creating a psychological effect that draws people toward you while simultaneously commanding respect. Another critical aspect of restraint is its ability to create curiosity. Mystery and selective disclosure, by definition, depend on holding something back. When you do not reveal everything about yourself at once, you leave room for others to wonder, to imagine, and to become invested in discovering more. Human beings are naturally curious, and curiosity generates emotional engagement. Oversharing eliminates the unknown, while restraint creates layers that others are compelled to explore. This is one of the most powerful mechanisms for building attraction without manipulation, by allowing your presence, your energy, and your carefully chosen revelations to speak for themselves. Restraint is also deeply connected to emotional intelligence. It requires awareness of your impulses, understanding your triggers, and controlling your immediate reactions. Emotional intelligence is not just about understanding others, it is about mastering yourself. When you are able to pause before responding, to assess the situation, and to choose what to reveal, you communicate composure and authority. These qualities are highly attractive because they signal someone who is in command of their internal world and capable of navigating relationships with clarity and intention. Additionally, restraint amplifies the impact of your vulnerability. Emotional openness has power, but only when it is given intentionally. If every moment, every word, or every thought is shared without discretion, vulnerability loses its potency. By exercising restraint, you ensure that when you do choose to open up, it carries significance. Your words, your emotions, and your personal disclosures are no longer ordinary. They become meaningful, memorable, and impactful. People remember restraint because it conveys that what you reveal is valuable, not casual. Restraint also cultivates patience, which is a rare and compelling trait. In a world where instant gratification dominates, patience is magnetic. It demonstrates that you are not desperate, that you are capable of waiting for the right time, the right moment, and the right person to earn your attention. Patience combined with restraint communicates confidence, foresight, and self-mastery. These qualities are universally respected and sought after, particularly in romantic or high-stakes interactions. Finally, turning restraint into attraction and respect is about intention. Every word you speak, every story you share, and every emotion you reveal should serve a purpose. The goal is not to be manipulative, it is to be deliberate, to maintain control over your presence, energy, and emotional output. Restraint transforms interactions from chaotic and reactive to intentional and magnetic. It ensures that your actions enhance your value rather than diminish it, that your presence commands attention, and that your emotional energy is preserved for moments that truly matter. When mastered, restraint is one of the most powerful tools for building influence, respect, and attraction. It allows you to navigate relationships without oversharing, to maintain composure under pressure, and to cultivate a magnetic presence that draws people in naturally. Oversharing may seem like connection, but it often destroys the very qualities that make you desirable. Restraint, carefully exercised, turns your presence into a force of influence, your words into instruments of impact, and your energy into a rare commodity that others are compelled to value. In the end, restraint is not about silence or distance. It is about strategy, awareness, and power. It is the art of knowing what to say, when to say it, and how much to reveal. It creates respect, builds attraction, and ensures that every interaction leaves a lasting impression. By mastering restraint, you become someone who is not only liked, but remembered, respected, and desired. Restraint transforms ordinary connections into powerful, meaningful relationships, and it transforms you from someone reactive into someone magnetic, composed, and unstoppable. Everything we've explored today boils down to one undeniable truth. Your words, your emotions, and your energy are your power. Oversharing, especially with someone you like, is the fastest way to surrender that power. When you give too much too soon, you dilute your value, erode respect, and risk losing the very attraction and connection you crave. But when you master restraint, when you pace your vulnerability, when you choose carefully what to reveal, and when you step into a level of influence and presence that is magnetic, unforgettable, and commanding. Remember this. The people who are truly respected and desired are not those who give everything away. They are those who understand the subtle art of mystery, who control their impulses, who navigate human psychology with awareness, and who transform emotional restraint into connection and influence. Every word you speak, every emotion you reveal, every story you share should have purpose. Oversharing is easy. Restraint requires mastery, but mastery is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. From now on, treat your words like currency, your emotions like a weapon, and your presence like a force. Protect your energy. Build intrigue. Pace your revelations. Let people earn your trust, attention, and heart. Because when you do more than attract. They respect you, they value you, and they are drawn to you in ways that cannot be forced or replicated. Take control of your expression. Guard your vulnerability. Cultivate mystery. And above all, understand that your restraint is your strength. Own it. Command it. Live it. Because the moment you do, you no longer chase connection, you become someone worth seeking, someone worth respecting, someone unforgettable. Your power is in your control is in your restraint, and your restraint is the gateway to attraction, respect, and influence that lasts